Hello, everybody, and welcome to Adventures in History. I'm your host. We are back on, not reruns, because this is live, and we're going to do it live again. But we are back with another makeup episode because I was a bit careless in younger streaming ages and did not save everything that I should have saved. But I know that a lot of people weren't around at the beginning, so making stuff up might just be new for everybody. This topic was one that I originally covered all the way back in May of 2020, so that was more than 4 years ago. So, seems like it might be worth a revisit. But we're here to talk about Hinduism. But, first we want to say hey to everybody and make sure that we're all doing okay. So Matt shows up like, I don't know if Matt has it just planned out by time to show up 12, 13, 14 years early. Sorry. No, 2020 was last year. Yeah, right. What's up, Moose? Viper's here. Sohn, what's going on, man? Good to see you. Hope you've been having a good one. So last time I was hanging out with Sohn, he was playing this version of Ocarina of Time where he and four other people were all sort of playing the same game, and stuff was like randomized. It was crazy. It was crazy. I don't know if I could play that and get around it, but it was fun to watch. So, should go hang out with Sohn if you want to watch some video game stuff. Ugh. Has been a rather long day. Lots of work, classes, then lots more work. And came home and I tried to make some progress with some stuff, but it didn't work. Psychical, what's up? Have I ever played Caesar games? I don't think so. I've played like Rome Total War, but I don't think I've ever played a Caesar game. What's up, Chocobo? You had an extra hole put in your head today. Did you do something like get a tooth filled? You had your root canal redone. There we go. What up, Prof? How's it going, man? It's a city builder and it's very old. Yeah, I must have missed that one. So my experience with computer gaming is very, very odd. I played a lot of stuff back when everything was like disc driven, and then I have a really big gap because I didn't have a computer at home that I could play on, and the games that I played on these very, very old computers actually played when I was at school. So I didn't start playing computer games again until probably like the late 90s, mid-late 90s, like 96, 97. The first computer that I had at home that could play a video game couldn't play Final Fantasy VII all the way through because it was that slow. So we'll just say it that way. Chocobo says that they were watching my YouTube videos and you're wondering where the Hinduism was. And it turns out I'm doing it today. Yeah. There you go. Tired, but yeah, I know what you mean, Prof. I hear you. Black as my soul, I'd rather die than give me control. Interesting. You thought trepanning went out with stuff. Yeah. Just drilling holes in people's heads, and we'll just cover it over with a coin that we smash really flat, right? That'll totally work. It'll let the demons out, right? I missed the reference. I know it was a lyric, but I could not tell you from where the lyric came. Head like a hole. Well, there we go. Yeah, I guess that's a legitimate song to quote there. I like down in a hole better, but we all know that Shane has grunge preferences, right? Your first computer was a 200 megahertz compact Presario. Wow. That's back in the day, Sohn. I don't even remember what mine was because it wasn't mine. My mom got to check it out from the school that she taught at and bring it home over the summer. And I wasn't supposed to do what I did with it. I wasn't supposed to put games on it. I wasn't supposed to install things on it, but you know. Oh, I know that Down in the Hole is an Alice in Chains song. But that was the thing. I have a preference for Alice in Chains. That's kind of like my grunge world. Um, if you're going to put a three-legged dog on an album cover, sure, why not? Anyway, um, yours was a Commodore 64. Wow. I never got to mess around with a Commodore 64. I can't even remember what all of the computers at the school were. Some of my other friends would be able to tell you more because they were all older than I was and actually paid attention to stuff. And I was just playing around on them because I was bored. My mom taught and had to have things like meetings after school. So, you know, I would just go to the computer lab and do stuff that I wasn't really supposed to. But nobody was there to tell me, and nobody else knew how to fix them. So I ended up knowing more about the computers than all of the teachers and stuff. So they actually called me when they needed help with stuff. Way Down in a Hole is a Tom Waits song. Right. Aloha, Frank. How's it going? There's a Commodore 64 Mini. Yeah. I saw that. Back when the sort of fad of mini things were going around. I'm experiencing mental decline. Cognitive decline is what I'm experiencing. Cognitive decline. And I'll just sort of let the rest of that lie so that it doesn't end up on the on the VOD. You have a question about episode 5. I don't remember what that was, but you're welcome to ask it. And then we shall launch off into our topic for the day. I guess I'll just wait. You were talking about migration from the Bering all the way down to South America and how crazy fast it was. Yes, it was very, very fast compared to migration at other parts of the world. Migration from Africa to China, for example, took like 80,000 years. But then migration from the Bering Strait crossing down to South America took like maybe 30,000 at a maximum, which is kind of crazy. But with the comparison to water flowing, it seems pretty obvious that it would be very fast. The Bering would be an awfully big place for population pressure. Well, sure, that's part of it. The North American continent was absolutely more covered by glaciation at that point than just about anywhere else in Asia or Europe would have been. So the population pressure is based on the number of people versus the amount of food that you have to have and the supplies that you have to survive would have pushed people to move faster. But the point is, like, once you got past the glaciation and into the middle part of the American continent, where we would probably today call, stuff like central United States, this was in a land of abundance, and had people followed the same sort of pattern that they had followed previously when they hit places like the Ganges Plain, which is, what we can see right here. People hung out in India for a long time, and populations grew because it was a land of abundance, and then it became a hub for migration, and several migrations left out of India and went over to places like China, and China became a hub of migration as well, because people were just sort of hanging around in the land of abundance. But when they hit this same sort of atmosphere in places which today would be like, the Great Plains or, even the really fertile parts of California or the Appalachian valleys and things like that, they didn't just stop. They kept going. This is one of the biggest pieces of evidence where people kind of just expected this migration to be just along the coastline. That's one of the larger theories of how people moved through the Americas, was just down the Pacific coast. Conditions for living would be better each mile for several thousand miles. I mean, it would be good, right? Yeah. We're going to have to get away from the water reference here because I'm not following that one at all, Frank. Can we just like just say what you mean? I've lost the metaphor. Did cities grow out of necessity for safety? Not necessarily. Cities grew out of the fascination with being able to have a surplus. Having a surplus was a magical thing. Cave Geek is rating with a party of 8. Are you not entertained? Is that not why you are here? Welcome in, Cave Geek. And I hope that your brake and rotor change out went well, or at least as well as possible. And hello to everybody from Cave Geeks chat. I'm fairly certain that all of you know who I am, but if you don't, hello, my name is Shane. I teach history and sociology and anthropology at college, and we talk about history here on stream. And tonight we're about to start talking about Hinduism here momentarily. I'm not following the Ganges U.S. metaphor. People should have slowed down in the United States, and they didn't. They just kept on going to South America. I guess that I mean in India, a tribe would stop moving to live in an abundant spot, but America is abundant all the way down. Yeah, but so that means that they should have stopped and grown and developed population, and they did this like leapfrog kind of thing, right? Where you develop, and then some people move a little bit further away, and then they develop, and some people move a little bit further away, and then you kind of just like inchworm your way across the continent. Whereas that does not seem like it happened in the United States. People just like ran across the continent. Your car repair stream was dubiously entertaining, so you are here to be entertained. You suffered much, and there was that. That's unfortunate. Only one country is home to Hinduism. Why is it so limited? Hinduism is actually very... no, they didn't settle the whole way, Frank. They didn't make settlements in most of North America for quite some time. The first settlements that we see that are permanent sites of habitation where people would have probably lived are actually from South America. Some of the oldest sites that we have, like Monteverde down in, I think that's in Chile, dates to like 22,000 BC. Oh, yo, what's up, Sohn? Sohn is Spartacus. Thank you much, Sohn, for being Spartacus. So psychical, most religions start in one spot and then spread out. And if we were to look at where Hinduism is today, Hinduism is all over this area, like right here. We're going to talk a little bit about where it starts in just a little bit, but Hinduism has spread significantly. And of course, you know, we have Hindu people in America today, so Hinduism is on all the continents at this point, but, you know, diaspora and things like that. But there are minorities there. Well, I mean, if you go to certain countries, there are other countries than India where Hinduism is the majority religion, like Sri Lanka. Which I guess is kind of a cop-out because it used to be part of India. Anyway, let's get into the material and maybe some of this stuff will become clear. So first off, we have this word Hinduism. And let me talk a little bit about this word, and specifically why I don't really like the word Hinduism. And I don't really like it because it's basically just a colonizer term, right? So when you first see this word used in the ancient world, if you're looking for Hindu, it's not referring to a people group. It's referring to, I'm sorry, it's not referring to a religious group. It's referring to a people group. And it's referring to this people group of people that live around the Indus River. So India comes from Indus, Hindu comes from Indus, this big river valley right here that you can see. And it was just a reference to the people that live around this valley, right? So the Hindu people, or the Hindu people region, or the Hindu region, was like, it was just a geographic term or a people group, and it wasn't applied to a religion. And later on, when we get a lot more like international dealings and the world starts developing in the Iron Age, we get this term Hindustan, which shows up in ancient Persian references. And when we see the word Hindustan in Persian records, it means all of this stuff that's orange that you can see here. And again, this was just the people that live in this area. It was just applied to this region of people. Basically, the northern part of what is modern day India, and the floodplains of the Indus River and the Ganges River, which runs right up here. There's a really big block of geographic highland right here called the Decca Plateau. So basically, Hindustan was everything north of the Decca Plateau and south of these really big mountains right here, which are the Himalayas, right? So, you know, the kicker here is that we call these people Hindus, and this is referring to their religion, but why? Well, the reason why is the British. The British show up and they conquer all of this area, and they go, hey, what are you? And they go, okay, well, we have all of these people groups, and here are these different groups, and we speak all these different languages. And the British are like, whatever. And they go, what do you believe in? And they're like, oh, man, we have all these different religions. And the British are kind of like, no, we don't really want to do like all of these religions. We're just going to call your religion Hinduism because it's the religion of the Hindu people. So boom, there's Hinduism. Now, that's not necessarily a good way of explaining a religion, because there are lots of different parts of Hinduism, and not all of the branches of Hinduism are compatible with each other, and they don't really like being confused with each other a lot. This would be something like an alien coming down and coming to the United States and saying, hey, what do you all believe in? And we say, well, we've got Christianity, we've got Judaism, we've got, some Buddhists, we've got some Hindus, we've got some people that are, spiritually inclined, but not necessarily actually devoted to any particular gods. And the alien's going, okay, we don't want to care about the differences. You now just worship Americanism. That's your religion. Boom, go. Right? It's the same sort of thing. And you have a whole bunch of different ideas all getting mushed into one. And that just doesn't really sit well with me. And it doesn't sit well with other people as well, including people that are practicing Hindu faith. There are several other terms that are gaining traction. Followers of Dharma is one of these. And there are some other words in native languages that are kind of catching on. So, whatever. You thought of a potential viewer request topic. You don't know what the scope is. Climate change. I'm not talking about climate change because that's like way too much. Way, way, way too much. You could do that literally in any period of time in the world. We'd have to pick a specific one and do it. That scope is way too big. I guess this answers what kind of food you're eating tonight. Well, there we go, right? We're having Indian food on Sunday. My wife is going to be the chef de cuisine, and I'm going to sous chef for her, and we're going to cook a whole bunch of Indian food and invite our family over who have tried some Indian food, but not really, I guess, made any of it ever. So, in 2012, 70% of Sri Lankans were Buddhist. Okay, I was wrong. It happens. So, there we go. So, I don't really like the term Hinduism, but we're going to continue to use it because that's what a lot of people use, and that's what a lot of people that practice Hinduism use, even if they are very clearly not all believing the same sort of things. So I don't necessarily think it's some sort of slur, or I don't think any sort of I don't think this is like a term that is like openly derogatory to most people that are Hindu. So I don't think there's a huge reason to necessarily avoid it. The idea was to explore the social impacts when crops start failing. Yeah, but see, that happens like 1,000 times. So we'd have to narrow that down a lot. Don't sue my wife. She's smarter than you, and she would win a legal battle. I wouldn't want to sue my wife anyway, but I get the joke, and I appreciate it. So, where can we start on our historical discussion of Hinduism? And we can start with these writings, and these writings are called, if I can click the right button here, that's the wrong button. These are called the Vedas. The Vedas are a collection of writings that are very, very old. There are thousands and thousands of pages of them total, but there are 4 of them. The Vedas are basically the original Hindu scriptures. Now, Hinduism as we understand it today is quite different than Hinduism in the original format. And the Vedas themselves are not today in the original format that they were to begin with. They started off as usually oral traditions and teachings, and it took quite some time for those to become finalized or sort of reach their final form, and then even longer for them to be compiled and written down in any sort of transferable way. So what's interesting here is if you find a devout Hindu person and you ask them who wrote the Vedas, the question is going to be a little bit of an odd one, because they're not going to tell you, oh, these people wrote the Vedas. What they're going to tell you is these people maybe compiled the information that was in the Vedas, or the information that was in the Vedas were revealed to these particular people. Because the belief around the Vedas themselves is that they are the containers of what we might call like universal wisdom. So they are things that have universal truth that extend beyond humans and have covered, existence as far back as existence became existence. So it wasn't that anybody wrote these things down, it's that the knowledge of these things that existed forever became revealed to certain people who were enlightened individuals, and that those people were then able to take what they heard and compile these things or recite these things into material that was inspired by external forces. Sometimes these are deities, sometimes this is the universal force of existence. But the idea here is that nobody wrote these. This isn't somebody's idea that they came up with. It's truth that they found out, or it is wisdom that was understood because of their piety. I think I might have to sneeze here for just a second. Excuse me. I've been fighting like a low or minor level cold for about a week and a half now. And it's not really that big of a deal, except for I've been sneezing a lot. How many Anuvadis are there out there reading and maintaining these Vedas? Probably, the word we're looking for here is actually Rishi. A Rishi is an enlightened individual who gains a certain level of knowledge and was then able to record or recite the material as it was. And the stuff that's the really good stuff here, that the material that was heard, and when we say heard here, we mean like material that was gained from universal sources. This is called Shruti. This is inspired material that is the source of the Vedas wisdom. And that's what they would say. Now, if we look at who those people would have been, historically speaking, these are the people that were active in the leadership of the religious organizations at the time. And this is stuff that goes back as far as the 1700s BC. The earliest examples of some of these things might even go back further than that, depending on exactly how you want to trace particular elements of the Vedas. Some of the stuff that is involved in the collection of the Vedas comes from several different societies. Of course, you have Aryan society, but you also have Dravidian society. These are two people groups that were mixing in the Indian subcontinent around the time that the Vedas were written. So you get a little bit of Dravidian stuff, a little bit of Aryan stuff, and then they kind of have to sort out how that all interlaces together. Was the Kama Sutra required reading to become enlightened? No, it wasn't. It's actually quite late in the process, actually, of the development of reading materials. It's pretty far towards the end of any sort of period that would have even been considered what we might call enlightened. And the Kama Sutra is not part of the Vedas. That's a different text. But these are people like priests and monks and even writers, like poets and music. Some of the oldest music notation that we have in human history comes from the Vedas, specifically the Atharva Veda, if I'm correct. But if you read these different Vedas, and again, there are four of them. There's the Rig Veda, which is the oldest, then the Sama Veda, the Yajura Veda, and the Tharva Veda, which is the youngest. They've got all sorts of different types of writing. It's very similar to the Christian Bible, where you have different books that are of different genres. You have mythology, you have wisdom, you have poetry, you have songs that you would sing, you have histories, you have stories of kingdoms fighting against each other, you have stories of God or gods directly intervening in human activity, and the Vedas themselves are basically putting the stories and these beliefs of these people into context with the wider world. So you get your creation event, you get your description of how gods and humans interact, you get your ways of living, you get your do a good job, do a bad job kind of thing here. You end up having a lot of just general application kind of stuff that comes out of the Vedas. I guess I'm asking, where do Ribbon's Allmark and Tierra Erda fit into this history? Did they digitize the Vedas into the Veda system? No, this has nothing to do with Gundam 00, and those aren't even really any of my favorite characters. This is a bad gimmick in the show. But anyway, so what time period are we looking at? Well, if we look at the map here, what we see is a map of several kingdoms in the northern part of the Gangetic Plain, and we can see that the late Vedic period lasts from about 1100 to about 500, and the most active kingdom that's going to be referred to and sort of revered historically as this guy right here, the Kuru Kingdom. These guys are going to be really, really, I guess, influential in the compilation of the Vedas themselves. So they're going to be the ones that sort of do the compiling, the collecting, the editing, the finalizing, the revising. And out of this particular kingdom, you're going to see probably all of the Vedas in at least nascent forms, and probably the finalized version of the first few. The Atharva Veda is the youngest one, and it gets, it appears to get edited quite a bit. Thank you so much, Claire, for the corgi bits. But this region right here, this northern plain of the Ganges, right here on the Indus River Valley, this region is where a lot of the sort of Aryan heartland came from, or was originally. The entrance, of course, is up here through the Khyber Pass, coming from what we would call here Afghanistan and Pakistan down into India. So this region was where a lot of the original mixing took place. So this is sort of legitimate for a lot of the advances that we see. But the Vedas themselves are not the only Hindu writings that are important. You also have a later addition to the texts that are called Puranas. Not Puranas, it's Puranas, Puranas. And these come later on as the priesthood of people that were running Hinduism attempted to sort of clamp down on how a lot of the practice went, and it sort of restricted a lot of Hindu beliefs and activities. And then later you see additional writings that are going to come around and kind of re-expand that to a lot of people. One of the most important later Hindu writings that's not part of the Vedas or the Puranas is the Bhagavad Gita. I don't know if you all are familiar or have ever heard of the Bhagavad Gita, but it is a very, very important Hindu religious text that sort of re-expands the application of Hinduism to a lot of people. A lot of scholars kind of look at the Gita as a sort of, and this is not a direct parallel, but sort of like a New Testament of Hinduism that made the Hindu faith more applicable to larger audiences that weren't just super conservative and weren't just sort of at the top of the social hierarchy. Is this priesthood a form of shamanism? Perhaps originally, if we go all the way back to the original people that would have been following religious ideology that we would have called pre-Vedic. These would have been people that were Indo-Europeans, the people that were kind of hanging around up here around the Caspian Sea, Black Sea region. Those were going to splinter into several different groups, including the Aryans. And the Aryans were going to migrate down here back into India. So they sort of make a whole loop. They leave India as India is expanding because of the population growth due to migration hub sort of status. People leave and move up to this way, and then the Aryans end up kind of moving back about 17-ish thousand years later or so. But, yeah, the original religion would have probably been more or less shamanism based on the fact that these people were still very nomadic. But when they get back into India, the population had dropped substantially after the classical period. I'm sorry, after the collapse of the Harappan society. And there were people that still wanted to live in cities, but the cities were very small and they had quite a bit of abundance. So people moving in that were warriors took them over very quickly. If you want to know more about this, you can check out the, I think it's stream number 8 on the YouTube channel. You could talk more about the history of India itself. For those of you unaware, I do now have a YouTube channel. You can click the link there to see a lot of my VODs. What up, Chris? How's it going? Good to see you. All right. So you have several different periods of growth of religious scripture. The Vedas, of course, are the beginning. Then you have Purana period, which is, again, thousands of pages of writing. And then you have sort of the later period where you get stuff like the Bhagavad Gita. And the Kuru Kingdom, of course, is going to be very important because of this stuff. They're also going to write a lot of the Puranas that are going to kind of establish what they thought was the right way to do stuff. Yeah, I did the YouTube thing because people, basically every stream were like, hey, do you have your VODs on YouTube? And I got tired of people asking, so you win. There you go. So we have all these different beliefs and we have all these different people. That's sort of historically where it comes from. What can we say about Hindu beliefs? Well, we could say a lot about Hindu beliefs, and we could probably have an individual stream on all sorts of the different schools. There are about 8 different schools of Hinduism. You have 6 Orthodox schools and 2 heterodox schools. But what I would like to sort of do is try my best to establish a basic kind of, if you are Hindu, you probably believe something like this kind of core of ideology. And we'll start with what are kind of like the 4 big things. And the first of the sort of big things is this word dharma. And dharma is a very difficult word to translate. It doesn't have a straight to English translation. There are lots of scholars that have written papers trying to write a good definition for dharma, but in reality, there's not really a good way to directly define this. What's the translation for Greg? I knew it was going to happen. Nothing to do with the show. So Dharma is also not the initiative from Lost, and I don't know what else it could have been in pop culture, but Dharma basically is the right way of doing things. And it's proper activity, and it is the understood best way for people to act. It's a sort of a universal truth that exists outside of humanity that we should recognize and then obey. You can also say that Dharma is a sort of a law where you are compelled to follow these things because they are the right way. It's the high road, sure. But this is a way of life. You are supposed to dedicate your life to Dharma. And each person has sort of a personal dharma, but they also have dharma on like a community level and on a city level and on a country level and on a global level and on a universal level, because this is all sort of macrocosmic. You are a being who is originally a part of the universe, and because of that you have a connection with the universe, and because of that you are supposed to follow the right way for things to work out. And this is really important, and it's the first thing that most people talk about when you talk about Hinduism, because you have to start off with the assumption here, if you're trying to really understand their religion or their religious ideology, that there is a sort of an objective truth. And not all concepts of religion are going to be down with that, and not all philosophies are down with that. But in Hinduism, you have the objective right way of doing things, and that's Dharma. Now, the problem is, and the difficulty is, that as humans, we are not always capable of understanding Dharma, and we are also not always capable of making the right decisions to follow Dharma. Or we are capable of it, but we are tempted to not do so. We have temptation to go against Dharma because of personal gain or because of vengeance or negative emotion or things like that, right? So what's really interesting here is that Dharma is not necessarily directly tied to a specific god, because even a lot of the gods are sort of ruled by Dharma, depending on which interaction or which version of Hinduism you are going to approach. But you've got to have your Dharma, and you've got to follow your Dharma, and you got to seek your Dharma, and you have to meditate on your Dharma, and you have to make sure that what you are doing is going to follow the path that is right for you. And that's really important, because this is sort of the higher calling, right? This is the thing that is bigger than we are, the thing that is supposed to make us better. And if everybody in the universe followed Dharma, all of the suffering and pain and negative stuff that exists in the world would evaporate. Because if everybody was following Dharma and everything worked according to Dharma, we would be in perpetual universe, not universe, perpetual. I've lost my word here. Not bliss. That's not the right word. Utopia. Sorry. Yeah, this is sort of like the greater good, but it's not just the greater good, right? Because it's also something that's beyond just good or bad. It just is, right? Our concept of good means that we are attempting to quantify this under our understanding, but Dharma is bigger than that, right? It's a force. It's a universal thing. It exists outside of our ability to even call good because it is just the right way. Right, you've got to stay in your lane, but that's kind of part of it. Like, you follow your lane. Like, you have your right way of doing stuff, and you're supposed to find it and stay in it. So that's Dharma. And that's important for us to understand because that brings us to the next part, which is samsara. Now, this is where a lot of people get really confused about Hinduism because everybody thinks that reincarnation is something that it isn't, right? A lot of people are like, I want to die and come back as a tree. It doesn't work that way in Hinduism, right? The process of samsara is the cycle of birth, life, death, and rebirth. This is the movement of the wheel, right? You have a passage through this life. And you are born, and at the point of your birth, you are going to receive a little bit of this thing called Atman. Now, Atman is the easiest way for us in Western society to translate Atman is soul, but it's not the same. Atman is sort of a splinter of the universal spirit, right? The universe has this universal spirit called Brahman, and a part of Brahman becomes your spirit, your individual spirit. So you are connected literally to the universe through Atman. And Atman is eternal and unperishable. And here, I'll type it here. Brahman. So Brahman, again, is this universal spirit, and it is the force, it is the power that runs everything. It is the river that flows. It is not Brahmin. Brahmin are different. Brahmin are the people that are at the top of the caste system. Yeah, that's correct. That's the caste system. And we'll talk about that in just a second. And it's even more confusing because there's actually a god called Brahma. So this is easily confusable here. So Brahman is not a personified god. It just is the force of the universe. From it, all things were created. After destruction and after the release from samsara, all things return to it. It doesn't have what we might call awareness, but it doesn't. It does have purpose and direction. A lot of people refer to it like a river, because it flows, and because it flows, it has force and it has direction, and because of the power of its force, it can change the course of things. Right, like rivers can change the riverbanks, and they can, move land around. They can also flood and reshape the landscape. So that's kind of what Brahman is. Brahman are also two-headed cows in the wasteland. They are. So now we're just conjugating Brahma. Yeah, right. Brahman feels a bit like the divine energy from the Aztecs a few streams ago. Yeah. It's similar. It's very similar. The difference is that the Aztecs gave that power a personification, whereas Hindus don't. They don't ever see Brahman as a spirit or of a personified individual or an identity like that. It's just sort of like non-human force stuff. But anyway, Brahman gives a little piece of itself to you in the form of Atman, and that is the spirit that lives inside of your flesh. So it's not your soul because you don't own it. And it's not necessarily even you as a person because it existed before you and it will exist after you, right? You're just the corporeal shell that holds on to this, and it has an individualist situation because you as an individual will guide this through the process of samsara. Am I the mechanism by which Atman is learning something or gaining some experience? No, you are the vessel that is supposed to guide your Atman back into contact with Brahman. So your goal is to go through samsara, which is this process of life, birth, death, rebirth, right? And along the way, you are supposed to be following your dharma. And by following your dharma, you are getting your Atman closer back up to Brahman, right? So samsara is the wheel that turns the mechanism. Now, this is where we are also going to run into a term that a lot of people use also quite wrongly, and that term is karma. Now, we use this term in English to mean basically getting what you pay for, right? We have this whole series of videos where it's like instant karma, where some jerk will cut you off in traffic and then a police officer is like right in front of you and then woo, right? And, you know, you get pulled over immediately and people are like, boom, instant karma. That's not the way that karma really works in Hinduism. Is there any sense in which Atman splitting off from Brahman is a mistake to be rectified, or it's just how things are? It's really just sort of how things are. The act of being born itself, well, let me be careful here, because different versions of Hinduism have very different opinions about this. Generally speaking, your birth was not itself an error originally, right? No, it's fine. That's perfectly fine. That's why we're here. That's why we can talk about all this stuff. So when your spirit, your Atman, left Brahman and was first incorporated into a human, that wasn't necessarily seen as a negative act in itself. Now, you not doing the thing that you're supposed to, there's where the negativity comes in. So this is where karma starts affecting you, right? So if you are following your dharma and you're doing what you're supposed to, you are basically narrowing the gap between Atman and Brahman. So you are following the right path, the correct way of doing things. You are being a good, positive being, and this is more akin to like gaining or losing weight almost. So every action has something attached to it that is going to either weigh you down karma-wise or lighten you up karma-wise. And if you continue to do the good thing, you are going to increase your positive momentum. And the goal is, when you get to the end of your current example of corporeal life, that if you have done well enough, you will be reincarnated as a human in a higher caste or a better situation because you have gained positive karma. Now, you can also get negative karma, and you can be bad, you could do bad things, and this is when you show back up as lower level castes or people in worse positions. Hinduism does not believe that you can come back as an inanimate object, and it's purely because of stuff like karma, where actions have weights attached to them. Now, just to be clear, there are some versions of Hinduism that are basically fatalistic, that don't believe in free will at all. But that's really just one of the heterodox schools. That's Ajivika, which is not considered by many people to be an orthodox version of Hinduism. They're like atomic predeterminists, so they are an interesting group. The let me see. Karma isn't what you think it is. It's karma. Yeah, it's a different color, right? Coming back as an inanimate object would give you no way to actively follow Dharma. Right. That's right. So that's sort of like a dead end, right? If you come back as a tree, trees don't have the ability to exercise this stuff, right? You just sort of get stuck. Now, the question here is whether or not you have free will, or to what degree you have free will. All of the orthodox schools are going to at least agree that you probably have free will. And that's an important distinction here. Most of the heterodox schools are going to have interesting approaches to things like karma. So Shravaka, which is another one of the heterodox schools, doesn't believe in karma at all. They are also completely atheistic. They don't like the idea that samsara works the way that most Hindus say that it does. And they're much more philosophical than they are religious. They accept other religious documentation that's not just the Vedas or the Gita or the Puranas. A lot of them will read Buddhist stuff and say there's wisdom here. So the heterodox schools are the ones where you get really far into the you don't have free will stuff. So you doing the right thing and you making the right decisions is going to be what gets you there most of the time. Now, this is where we can talk about the caste system, which was obviously a very important part of the system itself of Hinduism. So the caste system is broken down into various different groups, and you have your priests at the top. This is where Brahmin comes in, right? Brahmin is the caste that is at the top. They're the priests. They are sort of like the 1% of the population in the modern world. They're very, very wealthy. They have a lot of social power. They have a lot of political power. Under them, you have Kshatriyas, who are warriors, and because warriors were directly related to the ruling class became sort of grafted into Kshatriyas when the people began to live in sedentary kingdoms, because the king, of course, is the greatest warrior. So you get the ruling class sort of, again, co-opted into Kshatriyas. These are going to be the people that have secular level authority. The people that are going to run the kingdoms are going to run the cities. They're going to run the war efforts. They're going to make all the political decisions, etc. Heterodox. Oh, Aristotle, what's up, man? Good to see you. It's pretty funny. Free will appears unscientific, but the benefit of paths that are not those of least resistance can't be explored any other way. Right up. I feel you, hydrocannabinoid. Good to see you. Welcome in. Yeah, so that concept of being able to choose is really, really important to the larger concept of Hinduism. So you've got your priests, you've got your ruling class, then you have Vaishyas, who are the like farmers and merchants and laborer class. Sorry. They're going to be the skilled laborers. Skilled laborers are then the third caste, and then under them you have Shudras, who are like peasants or unskilled labor. And then below that you have, of course, the untouchables, which are in today's India literally illegal for people to be called untouchables. But the lowest of the castes were the ones that had to do the labor that nobody else wanted to do. So these are like your morticians and your garbage collectors and your diggers of ditches for latrines and things like that. your animal skinners and stuff like that are doing jobs that are typically in that period of time, talking about ancient India, considered very unsavory. So the idea here is that if you are born into one of these castes, like let's say you are born a farmer, you're a Shudra, you are in the unskilled laborer caste. If you are born into this caste and you do your job really well and you follow your system and you follow your dharma and you make good decisions and you gain positive karma, when you die, you get to come back up a level or two, right? You get to go maybe to the Vaishyas and you get to be a merchant or somebody that's a specialist, or a farm owner instead of a farm worker, right? And you keep going up and you keep going up through the course of multiple incarnations. What's up, Claudio? Good to see you. So this is the idea, right? That the caste system exists as a way to reinforce dharma, karma, and samsara, right? If you're going to build a social hierarchy, the way that you instill the need to make sure that people do what they're supposed to do is to install a system where you get better off if you do the right thing. Are they never able to move a caste when they're living? Chocobo says. That's a great question, and the answer is no. The caste system was very, very rigid, and you did not have social mobility. If you were born a Shudra, you were going to marry a Shudra, your family were going to be Shudras, your kids were going to be Shudras, and you were going to die a Shudra. That's just the way that it was. There was not social mobility allowed, because this was not just social engineering or economic engineering, but this is also religious engineering, right? So like you don't get the bonus until you die. So the way that you make sure that you get the good bonus and get the one up is to be a really, really good person and work really, really hard your entire life. It's depressing. So that's the thing. If you get depressed about it, you're not doing dharma the right way, right? Because depression is being ungrateful for a situation. You don't know where you were in the last life, right? You may have been in a much lower level, right? So you could have been one of the demonic levels prior or something like that, and you were just a conflicted demon and didn't torture people very much, so you got moved up to a farmer. And if you're ungrateful for that, guess where you might end up next life, right? Sounds like telling the lower caste that hard work is their dharma parallels Protestant work ethic fairly well. There is a substantial amount of legitimacy to that statement. This idea that you are only confirmed to be good after your death. And the only way to make sure that you're going to be good is to do really, really, really hard work, because you yourself as an individual are ultimately going to be responsible for your karma, but you don't know that. You don't have like a little counter like the points in Harry Potter to go see who's in trouble, right? I'm grateful that our religions aren't just a way of keeping in line, right? It sounds a lot like your employer. Protestant work ethic. So Nixlotl, you came in earlier and I didn't say hello to you. Hey, Nixlotl, good to see you. The Protestant work ethic is a term that gets used a lot in especially sociology, and it's a term that has a lot of credence given to it by a German sociologist named Max Weber, who wrote a book called The Protestant Work Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism, which was super duper influential, late 1800s, early 1900s. But the idea here is that because Protestants, or his premise, Weber's premise, is that because Protestants don't have confession like the Catholic Church does, and because Protestants don't have confirmation like the Catholic Church does, they're never sure if they're actually going to heaven. And because a lot of Protestants are Calvinist in that they believe that they don't have free will, the only way to make sure that you're going to heaven is to do good works and work really, really, really hard. Because if you're doing good things, the only way for you to do a good thing is for God to be working through you. So if God is working through you, obviously that means you're saved, and then when you die, you're going to go to heaven. But you don't really ever know that because it's not your decision. So there's a lot of parallel between that idea and sort of the way that the caste system operates. The suffering and the thirst resistance, right? Now, over time, the caste system becomes less rigid, and you see a new system sort of working its way into society. And this new system is built around these things called jati. And jati are they're kind of hard to describe. They are sort of like subcastes, but they're not necessarily a caste, because jati have the potential for social mobility. They are still sort of linked to jobs, but in the way that this usually works, the jati are more like a social group, or even a social kinship group, where maybe so this is not a direct parallel, right? But if your last name is Smith, and a lot of the people that are in your family are Smiths, even if you are not a Smith, you are like by trade. So if your last name is Smith, but maybe you're a farmer, right? You might still be in the Smith jati. So even if you're not working every day with a hammer and an anvil, you might still be in the jati of the Smiths. And the Smiths can kind of move around a little bit in social organization. And the idea here was a much later evolution after the rigidity of the caste system became too hard to enforce because of things like population size and density. But the jati are more, I mean, they're still around today. You can still go find a lot of these things kind of playing out in India and Southeast Asia as we speak, right? But jati are more like your subcaste organizations or social kinship groups. But the thing here is like, look, if I know who the cool people are, and I know what the cool people are doing that are making them popular, if my group sort of does that, right, and my group starts emulating these cooler groups, maybe we can say that we are on the same level as those cooler groups. And if nobody disputes that we're on the same level of those cooler groups, we are actually on the same level as those cooler groups. And sometimes you see jati kind of merging a little bit or overlapping very, very heavily. But this is, again, a much, much later development, because you can tell that if you have a really big population, a super rigid caste structure is just not likely to work, especially when you add in stuff like international opportunities, trade, the growth of early globalization, etc. The only thing you've ever heard or read as a Protestant is that good works are not the way to heaven, only Jesus. So I guess that was more niche to the Calvinists or something. Yeah, so Weber was a Calvinist, and most of the Germans at that time were Protestants that were of the Calvinist vein. And a lot of the people that came over to America that were Protestant were also Calvinists. It's not that the good works get you to heaven, it's that you can't tell for sure if you're heaven bound unless you are consistently doing good works. Right. But the ethic is more about defining your work as works. Yeah. So, look, I'm working really hard, and because of this, I'm doing the good works that God said that I'm doing. Now, there is one more step in the beliefs, and that is the final step, and it is called moksha. Moksha is the release from samsara. So this is sort of like reaching escape velocity. You gain enough positive karma that upon your death, your Atman is freed from the cycle of rebirth and is capable of then rejoining Brahman. So it kind of looks like this. You are born, your Atman gets incorporated, you live your life, you then die. If you have not reached the escape of moksha, you are then reborn, and you keep going through this, sort of like, centrifugal force, and then eventually on death, you end up this way, and your your connection to the cycle of samsara gets clipped and you achieve moksha. This is, again, the release from the cycle. And depending on the specific version of Hinduism that you are going to follow, moksha means different things. And moksha is also attained through slightly different ways. So, for example, the faith version of Hinduism called Samkhya says that you gain moksha through organizing and regimenting your mind. You are basically going to get through moksha by controlling your mental processes. You're going to order your mind and only think the right ways, and that's going to lead you to only do the right things. What's interesting here is that Samkhya doesn't really think that the gods are relevant. There are a lot of Hindu gods, and we're going to go through several of them here in just a bit. But Samkhya says that the gods aren't particularly relevant because they don't apply very much to our individual lives. Samkhya says that the gods are still stuck in samsara themselves. They're just super close to Brahman, which is why they have, astronomical level powers. But then you have like the yoga branch of Hinduism, and they say that moksha is gained through mental practices, but also through mastery of your physical form. So if you're doing yoga and you're holding these poses in, of course, modern day yoga, what we're mimicking there are practices that came from Hindu beliefs where you are supposed to be able to physically master your body. And you're supposed to be able to hold these forms and meditate at the same time. And through mastery of your body and through mastery of your mind, you are then able to combine this sort of this positive karma motion. And because you have mastered both body and spirit, you can basically go off into moksha. But then you have other branches that are like Vaisheshika, where you really only get to moksha because you completely disassociate from the body, right? You just lose all of your attachments to the body, and the body is what's holding you back. So you don't really focus on the physical stuff as much. You focus on getting rid of the physical stuff. But then you have Vedanta, where it's like the only way that you're going to get to moksha is through having a personal relationship with a deity, and that deity providing you with certain salvific power through intervention and intercession into your life. So the moksha thing is one of the more interesting elements of Hinduism, and depending on which version of Hinduism you're following, your path to moksha is going to be different, and what happens to you when you get to moksha is different. Some of them are going to say when you hit moksha, your individual concept of identity is utterly abandoned and demolished because your physical atoms basically go back into the universe and you are literally no more. You are sort of unalived. Other parts of Hinduism say that when you get to moksha, you sort of join in with Brahman, and that you don't have an individual identity anymore, but you become part of the force that shapes things. And you're not aware, you're not an individual, but your spirit and your power add to the larger force of things happening in the universe. So in theory, then, the only highest caste people can reach moksha, since they supposedly follow dharma for the best of their longest, or can anybody bake three? So that's a great question, Chocobo. Theoretically, anybody from any level can skip straight to moksha. Now, obviously, it is expected that you're going to sort of work your way up. But there are lots of stories of people that were very, very pious that sort of went from bottom straight up to top in basically one go, right? And you have these stories to encourage people to be good, right? you want to make sure that people don't go, well, I'm going to have to live 6 or 7 more lives before I get there. You go, well, don't forget about so-and-so, because he went straight from where you are to moksha, because he lived a very pious life. So you have that too. It feels like it has to be statistical. The higher tiers are more likely to break through, otherwise godhood would be a step on the path. So it depends on how you see the gods. Some people put the gods kind of on the path of the castes. Other people don't. Some people think that the gods were capable of reaching moksha, but they don't, because they decided to hang around and help people. That if they wanted to at any point, they could just sort of become mokshad, I guess. But because they are eternal and have power, they realize that they have this power, so you can use that power to help other people achieve moksha. Will everyone's Atman eventually rejoin Brahman? That's the thought. There's not really... I mean, there are end-of-the-world stories that play into this, and I did a stream, a viewer request stream on apocalypse stories, and I'm fairly certain that I covered one of the Hindu versions of Apocalypse. I don't know if that one is up on the YouTube stream yet. So if resistance is futile, eventually everybody will be assimilated. Theoretically so, but you don't want to push that, right? You don't want to be the last one standing, because that's going to be a really boring life for you, kind of walking around by yourself on Earth with nobody else around, right? Though that does beg itself to write a short story. The last man on Earth, because he refuses to follow his dharma. And he's mad at the gods, so he perpetually just does the wrong thing so that the universe has to keep existing around him. The last Atman on Earth. I was getting there, Frank. You beat me to it. Dun 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 dun. Centarius, what's up? For some reason, you have been restricted, but I can fix that. There you go. Welcome in, Centarius. How's it going? Hope you're having a good one. So again, there are lots of different... I don't know why. So Twitch is doing this new thing now where it's telling me, without my knowledge of why, that certain people are restricted, and I don't know why. I legitimately never received any information about their decision-making process on that, so no idea. But I fixed it, so there we go. So we have, again, lots of these different schools of Hinduism, but this is why I also think that Hinduism is a poor descriptor, because you have some people that say your salvation is through this, and other people that say no, your salvation is through this. But you also have people that are dualists, that think that the conflict of life is between physical and spiritual. But then you have these metaphysical people that are saying that the structure of life is all atomic, and our goal is to literally disaggregate ourselves. But then you have these people that are like the Mimamsa school, that are just super big on studying and internal focus, and these are a lot of the people that go off and do like monastery versions of Hinduism. And the only way for you to get moksha through their world is to recognize your individual connection between your Atman and your body, and learn about it so much that you go, okay, I see that this is a connection, and I see the connection between myself and the world. I don't want this to exist anymore. I can release myself from it. Then you become released. So it's sort of, it's not through your own power, but it's by your own volition. But then you have Vedanta, which is like, you don't really get there by yourself. You get there with gods and through God's help. So there are a lot of different versions of stuff here. Chaldeo is not restricted, no. I'm not like a history teacher. I am a history teacher. I teach history and sociology and anthropology at college. And I talk about all this stuff on stream because I dig it a lot. And I'm fascinated by people and history and culture and stuff like that. So that's what I do. And you're welcome to ask questions or hang out and be involved. Out of curiosity, what religious tradition do you I'm a heretic, and nobody really likes me very much. I was raised in a very, 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 very conservative Southern Baptist household. I do not consider myself Southern Baptist anymore. I guess Christian is the right way of saying it, but I don't think that many people that would consider themselves Christians would consider me a Christian, because I have a lot of what I would consider accurate views where they don't. But that's the ego, right? That's the ego. So speaking about gods and interactions with them, I'm going to don the adventure hat here and show you some pictures of stuff. And this is stuff that I didn't have when I was doing my original stream of this. But let's talk a little bit about some of these deities. And we'll start with Vishnu. And I can show you this picture here of Vishnu. This particular version of Vishnu is a specific aspect of Vishnu that has 18 arms. And you can see that each arm is holding something, and each one of these things is a specific item that has a specific important part. But Vishnu is the god of preservation. And if we looked close enough, I guarantee you that somewhere on one of these there would be a conch shell. It would probably be in one of these where the hands are broken. You very frequently see Vishnu carrying a conch shell, which is going to represent the concept of prosperity. Somewhere they would probably have a lotus, which is a symbol of perfection. But you also see a mace. I'm sure that they've got a mace in one of these. That's a thunderbolt. Yeah, so you see a mace. Maces are, of course, power, and you see chakras. Maybe there's a wheel in one of their hands, which is going to represent time. But anyway, the god of preservation. I've got another Vishnu here with the mace. Again, broken hands. Probably would have been a conch shell or a lotus or something like that. But this image came from the Detroit Institute of Arts, which is a really, really great museum that surprised the heck out of me, and I would really encourage you to go if you're ever in the area. This image came from the Carlos Museum in Atlanta. I actually just took this picture about 3 weeks ago when I was over in Atlanta. And I was like, ooh, that's a cool Vishnu. So there we go. In some versions of Hinduism, Vishnu is considered like the god that all other gods came from. In some versions of Hinduism, Vishnu has multiple different avatars. If you've ever heard of Krishna, for example, Hare Krishnas, Krishna is an avatar of Vishnu. Rama, the god Rama, is also an avatar of Vishnu. But in some versions, basically all gods are avatars of Vishnu. So, interesting stuff. Arm Lady, yeah, I bet she's great. So Vishnu is actually a guy, but Vishnu can appear as a girl. So there's also that. If you don't immediately want to pop your eyes out at the name, what's your opinion on Jordan Peterson's analysis of religious symbolism? Jordan Peterson needs to talk about clinical psychology, and that's all that he needs to talk about. Because everything else that he talks about, he's most wrong about. And specifically, when he gets over into sociology and anthropology and Christianity, archaeology, anthropology, sociology, or history, Jordan Peterson doesn't know what he's talking about. He can talk a nice game, and he references a lot of stuff that people don't know, but he doesn't actually understand any of them. So, runs. Tuna can confirm, I'm guessing. Yeah, Tuna was actually at the museum with me when I saw this. Did Hinduism have a being that created the universe? Yes, Chocobo, and it really just depends on which version of Hinduism you're looking at, because they have multiple different creation stories. So there are quite a few different gods that get credit with being the creator. If you look at certain stories and certain versions, it's going to be this god or that god, or the universe itself was created by Brahman and the concept of basically just being. But there are lots of cool stories that you can look up, and some of them are the sort of typical, there was this god and then they fought and they tore the god apart, and this part of the god made this part of the land, and this part of the god made this god, or the good old dismemberment myth, which is fairly common as a world building concept. You also see the good old fashioned, there was chaos and then this god made form out of chaos kind of stuff. So there are several different versions of creation, and a lot of this comes from the fact that Hinduism itself was so widely practiced that different regions began to kind of have their own little different regional flavors of it, if you will. And that, of course, is going to lead to syncretism, where my original beliefs sort of filter into the primary beliefs of the religious ideology. So there you go. Jordan Peterson seems to say a lot of things about the psychiatrist Carl Jung. Well, yeah, he's a big fan of Jung, or Jung. But he can talk about Jung because Jung was a psychologist and a psychiatrist, and so is Peterson. And if he's talking about Jung, he probably knows what he's talking about. But Jung also needed to stay in his lane and not get out into sociology and anthropology and history. I don't like a lot of the stuff that Jung did. I'm not really a big fan of most of the people from that era of psychology. I think that they had decent ideas and then were just convinced of their own brilliance and kept running with it. So that's just my opinion, though. Love a good dismemberment myth. Yeah, don't we all? So Vishnu is a big, powerful god. You see Vishnu pop up a lot. We can also do Shiva, which brings us to our pun title, Shiva La Vida. I was debating about whether or not I should do a Coldplay pun, but it fit, and I kind of liked it. So I guess I'll just wear the adventure hat for the rest of the night. But, well, no, I don't, because I've got some pictures that I didn't take. Here's more pictures. This is Shiva. And you see Shiva here depicted in a particular way of showing Shiva, where Shiva has multiple faces. And in some versions of the mythology, Shiva is sort of the head god that was one of the creation gods, because so technically Shiva is the god of destruction, the destroyer god. But here's the thing about destruction. Destruction is not necessarily seen just as a negative in Hindu philosophy. Destruction in many cases is necessary for creation to exist, and is then necessary for preservation to sort of struggle against. So destruction is sort of disembodied in a lot of these things, and even though Shiva is very frequently seen as the destroyer, and in some versions actually is very violent and predatory, in some versions Shiva is like the forest fire that comes through and burns up all of the dross at the bottom of the forest floor, but then leaves room for new growth and leaves behind fertilizer from the ash that is going to preserve the existing material and promote new growth. But you see that with the multiple heads, showing sort of the multiple aspect of Shiva. Here's another really great bronze cast of Shiva. This one's just really, really great. This is also at the Detroit Institute of the Arts. I really, really love these bronze statues. I could look at this stuff all day long. But a really great Shiva. And here in the headdress, you see the moon, which is very frequently associated with Shiva as well. I guess we can just go on into the next pictures, and I can just talk about pictures here for a while. This is probably my favorite of the deities of Hinduism. This is Ganesha. Ganesha is the remover of obstacles, and he is the god that you very frequently are going to petition for aid in life. So let's get back over here and answer these questions. This is a woefully ignorant question, Frank. No, man. You don't need to preface things like that. Like we're all chill here, right? We all know that we don't all know everything, and it's cool. It's cool. But do the different hand signs and hands holding different objects mean same sort of things? Yes. The hand symbols are very important, and the things that the hands are holding are going to be very important. Shiva very frequently is holding a trident, and the trident itself is another one of these symbols that goes along with Shiva's identity. So the trident has 3 points, and the 3 points are creation, preservation, destruction. And this sort of, again, represents not just the so-called negative aspect of destruction, but also the positive aspects that come out of it. So if you see Shiva holding a trident, or if you see Shiva with 3 faces, this is the concept of look at me being 3 things, right? I am the destroyer god, but I am also the god that brings renewal, and I am the god that brings creation behind me, right? What's up, Sock now? If you see, I'll show you, let me skip ahead real quick. If I show you this guy, this is Indra. He is the sort of the king of the gods. He is holding this thing all the time. This is the Vajra. It is a thunderbolt. And because he is the king of the gods and he has the thunderbolt, he uses this to correct and to punish the evil. And you see him here with his hand over the elephant. Most of the Hindu gods have what are called mounts. So if you see a god riding an animal, that is the god's mount. And he here is holding his hand over the elephant to show that Indra is the protector of elephants. If I skip over here, yeah, so this is Agni. And here you see him with goats, because Agni's mount was a goat, right? So the hand symbols and all that stuff that you see are absolutely important. They all have specific meanings, and everything that they're holding is going to have a symbolic meaning, because again, here we're dealing with a visual language. Even though we have lots of written stuff in Hinduism, and even though we have lots of scriptures in Hinduism, the average person that followed Hinduism in the ancient world would not have been able to read, so they would have wanted to be able to look at these statues and go, who is this? And they see these things and they go, I know what that is. This god is holding, again, a lotus blossom. A lotus blossom, if you see this in Hinduism, is going to represent perfection. So if I see them holding a chakra, which is basically a circle with spokes, this is a representation of time and the passage of time. And you see tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of these things in Hinduism, and especially in art, and even in things like architecture, because you can see these sort of thematic elements pop up in decorations on temples and things like that. So not an ignorant question, perfectly fine question, and we've got the answer ready to go, right? So don't ever feel bad about asking questions. Out of curiosity, are there any psychologists or philosophers I particularly like? like Martin Heidegger, Ayn Rand, Foucault, Deleuze. I like none of those people. I can tell you which ones I dislike the most. I'm very not a fan of Foucault. Don't like him at all. Of all of those, I could probably read Nietzsche the most. And the rest of those continental people are not really my favorites. Not a big fan of that. I'm also not a big fan of the people that read Ayn Rand and think that they understand what she means and then go on to do horrible, horrible stuff. Not really my thing there either. If we're talking about philosophers that I like a lot more of the ancient ones than I do the more modern ones, but that's because I'm biased. I've read more of the ancient stuff. I really like Epicurus. I have issues with Plato. I'm even sort of on the fence about whether or not Plato really gets to count as a philosopher. I guess he kind of does because Platonic philosophy is a big deal, but Neoplatonism is really what made Platonic philosophy work, as opposed to him himself. Let's see. I mean, I've read all of that old stuff. I've read Aristotle, and I've read Thales, and I've read Diogenes, what we have of him, and I prefer the ancient stuff. The more modern stuff that I like is kind of eclectic. I like Bertrand Russell to the point that he starts talking about history. I like Camus a little bit because I think that absurdism is a way to do philosophy and retain a sort of a positive outlook on life. I don't necessarily think Camus is right, but I like reading his stuff, and I think that if he was still alive, we could probably hang out and have a good time together. I would definitely put myself on the more analytical side. I don't like any of the postmodernist stuff at all, and I think that if anybody has been on my stream long enough, probably knows that I'm not a fan of postmodernists. So I don't like Baudrillard. I don't want to read Jacques Derrida. I don't really care about Michel Foucault. Pierre Bourdieu can take a hike. Not a fan of them at all. I don't like postmodernists either, but continentals, including phenomenology and existentialism. Yeah, sure, but phenomenology and existentialism are both sort of dead ends, right? If you don't actually have any answers except for, we don't even know the answers, then that's kind of a cop-out for me. Where was I? Let's go back to looking at our deities. We're talking about Ganesha. So Ganesha, one of my favorites, pretty cool god. He is, again, the remover of obstacles. He's the one that is going to very frequently be offered offerings in temples. One of the offerings that you give him is milk. So if you go to the temple to pray for aid from Ganesha, you very frequently will bring him milk. And there's a particular branch of Hinduism that considers Ganesha the chief deity. This is a really cool Ganesha statue that I saw at the Detroit Institute of the Arts. And he's got a little sweet bun in his hand, which is actually pretty common for Ganesha. The little sweet bun, or the candy that he's frequently seen with, is a reward for living a good life. He's probably got an axe. Yep, here we go. Here's his axe. This axe is to cut your bonds that hold you to the earth and help you gain positive karma in the reincarnation cycle. So this kind of goes back to what Frank asks, what do these things mean? Yeah, like this axe right here is the cutter of bonds, right? Is the 6 arms to show off more power / domains, or does 6 versus 4 arms mean something important, or is it just an artist quirk? So the the way that you get to see the deities is different depending on, in some cases, the avatar specifically. The 18-armed Vishnu that I just showed you was almost certainly going to be from a version of Hinduism that would have put Vishnu at the top of the pantheon, and it is very frequently seen as a look how much power I have if I'm holding all of these things. Look at all of the aspects that I have. Look at all of the power and regality that I possess by holding all of these things. It's not just a quirk. This is absolutely meant to serve symbolic purpose, and you do very frequently see these things depending on the individual sect that made the work and the particular aspect of the deity that they're attempting to show. We have not talked about Parvati, DJ. Also, DJ, good to see you. I went to Dragon Con this year, and I didn't bump into you at all. So that was a weird event. I was certain that I would run into you eventually. But it's good to see you. I hope that you're doing well. All right, so Ganesha, here's Indra. I've already talked about Indra, but again, he's the king of the gods, the god of thunder. This guy is Brahma. So, Brahma is not the same as Brahman, and Brahma is not the same as Brahmin, but this is Brahma, and specifically the aspect of Brahma that is shown as the creator god. This version of Brahma has 4 faces and 4 sides, sort of like 4 arms that they face each direction. It's kind of a weird thing. But the idea here is that Brahma, having all of these different heads, seeing all of these different ways, is the one that holds all of the power over everything. So he created everything. If you are claiming that Brahma was the creator god that created everything, you are also quite likely to believe that the Vedas, the 4 Vedas, came out of his 4 mouths. So we have 4 Vedas. He has 4 mouths. Each mouth sort of emanated a Veda, which was the Shruti, the good wisdom that came out that people that were Rishi were able to interpret from the universe. But you see Brahma show up quite a bit. This is actually a statue that's in the Metropolitan Museum of Art that I haven't seen. I just got this off the internet. I'd like to spend about 3 days in the Met. Gotcha. You don't do Atlanta at all. That's fair. The traffic there is chaos. And then finally, this is Agni. And I had sort of hoped that our friend Agni James would be in chat tonight, Evolve Yourself TV, but I threw this in just because Agni is a cool god. He's the god of fire. And I like to tell this story about Agni. Agni is originally a Sanskrit word, and what's really, really interesting here is that we can actually trace the origin of that word all the way back to the original Proto-Sanskrit language for probably like fairly close between 2000 2500 BC all the way up until today. So it kind of goes like this. Agni becomes associated with fire, and then you have Igni, which is where we get stuff like igneous or ignite, and that moves over into Latin and then over into English. So our word today for ignite, ignition, igneous rock, meaning a rock formed by fire, comes from the same original root word in the Indo-European language that the Hindu god Agni is named after. And I love etymology, so little things like that just tickle my fancy a lot, because there's a chance that if we were speaking with a person from almost 5,000 years ago and said, ignite, they might go Agni, and we're like, and we make the little fire sign, and they go, yeah. And we would be able to communicate on that little small level. Little things like that just blow my mind. I absolutely love that stuff. KP, good to see you. We already did the radioactive cow joke. You did go to Dragon Con in '93. You met Stan Lee by accident twice that weekend. We were in the room across the hall from him in the hotel. Yeah, I mean, I guess if that's your Dragon Con experience, right? I guess that's it, right? False dichotomy. Yeah, thank you, KP. Do you believe that Israeli is justified in military action against Hamas in Palestine or no? It's not just a yes or no. You're, again, trying to get me to answer a yes or no question because then you want to run with yes or no. And now I'm seeing why you might have been restricted. It's not just a yes or no question. Do I think that Israel as a state deserves the rights to preserve itself and protect its citizens? Yes. Do I believe that Israel has the right to do whatever it wants to? No, I don't. So there's your yes or no answer. How about that? So there's that. All right. So Hinduism as a religion is varied. It is convoluted, and it has lots of different actual interpretations among even people that would consider themselves Hindu. So I hope that this has illuminated any of that stuff. And if there are questions about Hinduism that we can answer, or if I can clarify anything about any of the stuff that we've talked about tonight, I would be happy to do so. But at this point, I have sort of wrapped up the individual material stuff that I wanted to share about that. And for some reason, Shiva is still just hanging out here. But we'll do that. So yeah, if anybody has questions or any comments about the material, Matt wants to see the puppy. All right, let me call the puppy. Gotta mute. I suspect that she was deep in slumber. All right, so we'll do Tradle and then we'll do poppies. Okay, I think she's coming now. I hear her little toenails tapping on the floor. Or I thought that I did. Meditation is definitely part of Hinduism. And for some people in Hinduism, it is incredibly, incredibly important. The Samkhya school is really, really big on meditation. Hey, come see me. Oh, yes, here's the puppy. All right, let's go over to the puppy cam. Come over this way. Come here. Oh, here's the puppy. Hello, Kaylee. Oh, yes, the puppy cam. It works today. Let me get it a little bit better organized. There we go. There's the Kaylee pupper. And she has this absolutely disgusting toy fox that has been chewed to oblivion. But it's absolutely one of her favorite toys. And we were playing with it earlier. She likes it when you take it from her and then throw it on the other side of the couch. And then you have to run to the other side of the couch with her to see who gets it first. She also likes to play catch with it. Where are you going? Oh, you want to play catch? Let's see if we can. I wonder if we can get a catch on stream. I don't know how we would do that. You want to try to catch it? Nope, I threw it wrong. You want to try it again? You want to try again? Want to catch? Nope. It's hard to get the angle for the camera and the puppy the right way. All right. So that was the puppy cam. That was a good puppy. Oh yes. So that's Kaylee, and we can share with ourselves the puppy head pat emote. Done by artist and friend of the stream, Nick Salotl. If you would like to see people do cool art like animation stuff on stream, Nick Solotl is worth a follow. Casey Snow, good to see you. Welcome in. I don't know if I can do a shout out so quickly because Twitch makes you do this cooldown thing, but I have my own shout out command. Casey Snow, great artist who's killing it on Twitch. Bit of an inside joke. I did just drop by your stream yesterday when you had like 400 people in there, and you were going to say it was because of a raid. Whatever. Casey's a great artist and a really cool person to hang out with, so you should go follow Casey as well. Good to see you, Casey. All right, catching back up. Oh, we got to do... It was, though, and it was not 400 people. It was like 390 people. Okay. So, close to 400 people. I apologize. Let's do Tradle. Tradle. All right. So... Nope. Nope. Where's my Tradle screen? Poppy Cam. I thought it was this one, but it's not this one. Can I add window capture? Let's see if I can just... Oh yeah, there we go. We can just do it that way. Okay. And we'll just do some... We'll do some hot fixing here, because look, I'll just sort of like do and I'll put this behind me, and then we'll go back over here. I don't know what happened. I had a screen for this, and then I guess it just went away. So this game is called Tradle, and I'm going to close chat. So right now I'm looking at you, but I'm not looking at chat. And the goal of this online game is to see if I can figure out what country has these particular exports. And this is very hard, and I've never gotten it on the first guess. So we're looking at a total export of 59.4 billion. So this is a medium-sized country, or I guess fairly, well, it's not a huge country, but it's also not one of these Pacific Island countries. So we're looking at lots of mining. We've got copper, which is 27% or 22.7%. They have gas. They have petroleum. They have lots of mining like gold. Refined copper, animal meal and pellets. They've got knit stuff. They've got sulfuric acid and chemical stuff. Processed crustaceans. This is interesting because that means that they probably have a coastline. Baked goods, cocoa beans. Oh, see, now that's interesting, right? Because you don't see cocoa beans grown everywhere. So now I'm thinking South American country that has mining, coastline, cocoa beans, not a lot of alcohol, crustaceans, mollusks, fish, batteries, excavation machinery. All right, so we've got gold, and again, I can't see your chat right now, so if you're chatting at me and trying to tell me what I should guess, I can't see that. I always want to make the first guess on my own. So smaller but not minuscule country, cocoa beans, mining. I'm thinking coastline of Central South America, somewhere in there, mountainous region. But it also has gas and petroleum, so I'm thinking closer to South America. Can I not click here? Oh, I'm gonna guess. I'm gonna guess maybe Guyana. And I'm 88%. I'm really, really close. So... what would be 2,000 miles on the other side from Guyana, but southwest? Oh, is this Ecuador? Could it be Ecuador? Oh, no. It's got to be Peru then, right? Boom. Yay. There we go. So there is Tradle. Thanks for the plug, though. Yeah, 390 is 400 when married, to one significant digit. So that was actually the fastest Tradle that I've ever done. That's the best that I've ever done in Tradle, period. I'm glad that you all got to witness that. All right, so now we've got to do poppies. Here we go. This is poppies for Matt. Welcome to the calming field of poppies, where things are beautiful and life is happy, and you see things that make you happy, and the wind blows lightly across your face, and the love that you love is a deep love, and it's a happy time, and we all have poppies around us. So there we go. There's poppies. KP, who knows me personally, says that I am not that calm. That's true, but that's why it's funny, right? Okay. Okay, so yeah, that was... I think that's all the point redemptions. Did I miss anybody's point redemption? No, I think I got everything. I got the puppy, we did the poppies, and then we did Tradle. Am I not familiar with him? Who is him? What do I think about Weber's sociology? I teach Weber a lot. I've read the vast majority of the stuff that he's published. I am what you might say very, very familiar with Weber's sociology. I talked about him yesterday in class a little bit. No, that was Tuesday. Yeah, it was Tuesday that I talked about him. But am I a fan of him? He has good ideas and bad ideas. Like a human being, he is complex and not completely right all the time. And like a human being, he is ignorant of his own blind spots. He can rattle on about practicing value-free sociology, but also give a speech about how all of the Polish people in the the eastern part of Germany should be kicked out and their land be given to good Germans. Which is obviously not good value-free sociology. So, humans are complicated things, and it's very rare that I find a human being that I agree with across the board. But he's okay. He's a conflict theorist. He's not as radical of a conflict theorist as Marx, which I'm okay with. I'm not pro-murder, right? So let us go and do a raid. Ooh, AiH is streaming. I basically... Oh, come on, hush. I basically never get to go raid AiH, so we're going to go raid AiH, who is like my streaming little sister. They have changed all of this stuff now. Raid channel. Following... we could go raid Eris, who doesn't have a shirt on, but we raided Eris last time he didn't have a shirt on. So we're going to go raid AiH. So there's the plan. All right. Okie dokie. So thanks so much for hanging out, and I hope that you have a good one. And when we get to AiH's stream, yell adventure. and we'll be back around maybe Saturday, probably not Sunday. We've got family coming over on Sunday. Maybe Saturday afternoon to do some Gundam stuff, but we shall see. But until then, everybody, let me make sure that I say thanks. So thanks to all our subscribers. Big Tuna Neil subscribed again tonight. Sohn subscribed again tonight. Thank you for that. All the new follows. Thanks so much for those. And you can see people here that are patrons on my Patreon. And you can see here people that have sent me books for book donations. And hope that you have a good one. And we'll see you next time.